Great. Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. I am Jessica Grant. I work at the City of Santa Barbara. I'm the Supervising Transportation Planner, here to discuss the Safe Streets for All planning effort. Joining me tonight is Derek Bailey, our city traffic engineer, Chelsea Swanson, also transportation planner, who will be moderating the question and answer portion and some of the survey polls tonight. And then Teresa Soding, also transportation planner, who will be providing us with the Spanish translation. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is for city staff is requesting your feedback on proposed city streets to prioritize future improvements to make our roads safer for everyone in our community. And specifically, what we'll be covering is, well, what is the Safe Streets for All planning effort all about? And sharing a recap of data collision trends that we're seeing for the past 5 years in our city. What we've heard from the community, we have had a couple surveys done over the past year. So I wanted to share some highlights about that. And then specifically for tonight, this is where we need your help. We want to go over what the proposed high priority streets are that we would like to dive into in the future to look at engineering solutions on. And we also want to hear about your challenges on those specific roadways, because that really helps us when we start to design safety improvements, is to really know about really the day-to-day experiences. And we also would like your feedback on prioritizing our traffic safety messages. And then what's next in the planning effort? So to begin, what is the Safe Streets for All planning effort? We received a federal planning grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation, and it's to be a 2-year planning effort. The effort kicked off last fall, and again, we have 2 years to complete it. And the goal of the action plan is to prevent traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries within the city while increasing safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all by identifying infrastructure improvements that remove barriers to safe mobility. And we really thought we were ripe for this planning effort because a lot of the traffic safety improvements within our existing plans, like pedestrian master plan, bicycle master plan, our Vision Zero strategy, that most of those have been completed or will be completed in the next couple of years. So what is the moving forward? What does the upcoming safety improvements look like on our network, and where? As part of the grant, we are required to have required chapters in the plan. So that's everything that's in the blue column. And to date, and really where we needed to start was just performing the safety analysis. And so I'll be sharing highlights of the safety analysis. And then when we had originally went to like our community boards, the traffic circulation committee, for example, we really had to provide context to the safety analysis of our past and present approach to traffic safety. So we've completed a draft of that. And then, like I said, we have done a couple of traffic related surveys, one school specific, one citywide. And I'll be sharing some of the highlights of that tonight. But anyway, with all of those major inputs, then what are some of the focus areas that we'll be doing, and eventually project selections? And for this particular grant source through the federal government, if we were to seek more funding for implementation, projects, the requirement is to have an adopted action plan first. So we can't just skip to applying for grant funding for implementation without doing this process. So this process is critical moving forward. So let's go into provide just a general overview of what we're seeing in data collision trends for the past 5 years. Why 5 years is because typically when we apply for grants and really to do anything safety related in the city is grant specific, that we require grants in order to implement safety projects in our community. And usually with those grant sources, whether it's local, state, or federal, typically we have to provide about 5 years worth of collision data. So that's where that 5 years comes from. But of course, we don't just always look in a tunnel for snapshots in time. We do like to look at long-term trends. So let's kick off this first graphic. Um, and and this is the 15-year trend of injury collisions. And so what you'll see is, unfortunately, we are trending um, upwards in the amount of total injury collisions, with really the year 2024 being the worst year for number of collisions. And a lot of times when people think, oh, well, that's just proportional to the traffic that we see, that there's a certain amount of collisions related to that. But in this case, traffic volumes in our city really haven't rebounded yet haven't rebounded since pre-pandemic traffic volumes. So there basically isn't a correlation with that. A few other items to note in this table. We did have 2018 was a year where we were changing some of the collision analysis databases. So the collision data year, there's some anomalies. So we just wanted to highlight that. And then we also want to highlight that moped or motorcycle related collisions that's in this green color here. It doesn't mean that there weren't any motorcycle or moped collisions in the prior years. We just highlighted it out. So before, it used to be anything motorcycle related was tied to just a vehicle related collision. But after going through the collision data, the police department also really felt it was important to kind of tell the collision story, that to separate that out as a user, because we do see a higher percentage of collisions related to motorcycle moped collisions in our city. And then the other thing is, if there was a bike versus pedestrian, those are collisions, those are included in the bike involved category. For the next is knowing where to focus collision reduction efforts. And so if we were to triage certain areas, we do know that the highest percentage of collisions happen at intersections. And who is injured? These charts and graphs basically show that cyclists, pedestrians, and motorcyclists are most likely to suffer a fatal or severe injury in our city roadways. So when we analyze roadways for improvements, there is a lot of focus on our vulnerable users, because it's our vulnerable users that are suffering the most. So really, with a complete streets lens when we're evaluating traffic safety improvements. This next slide covers, well, when are collisions happening? And I'm not sure if you've ever had this lecture. I have, as a child, that if a parent says nothing good happens past 9 p.m., well, they're technically correct when it comes to traffic safety. because most of the fatal and severe injuries happen in the late evening and early morning hours. And why are collisions happening? And it's basically there for the known collisions. The top reasons are due to unsafe speeds, driving and biking under the influence, improper turning, and auto right-of-way violations. Please note that we do have the category unknown that seems to pop up on a lot of our collision data statistics, where there isn't a primary collision factor. Just wanted to mention that that is something that is cited sometimes, but as far as solutions, we usually don't have it because of the unknown factor. And then who is at fault? The graph to the left shows that drivers are the most responsible party at fault, followed by cyclists. Um, Basically in the mid 2022 is when as a city and really as a state and federal, is right around the time where we started to track the difference between just a regular conventional bike versus the electric bike and the collision statistics. So we don't, of course, have a lot of years of data, but what we're seeing in the brief time that it has been tracked is that the portion of e-cyclists at fault has been increasing. So wanted to share that. We're continuing to monitor that. The graph on the right is, well, who's at fault? Like, where do they live? And what's really interesting here, because we are known as a tourist town, there's always like a kind of the pointing of the finger that, oh, it's all the people that come from the Bay Area or the LA area to our city, they're causing all the collisions. But turns out that it's really our South County residents that make up the bulk of a party at fault for the collisions. And why that's important is because it means that if we were to do traffic safety education campaigns, we think it would work well because the majority of the intended audience does live here in the South Coast. This is an interesting one. Again, I have a high portion of driving or biking under the influence in our community. And this is a heat map showing concentration of collisions. So red being the most concentration of collisions, followed by orange and then yellow. But you'll notice that there is a very strong correlation between the amount of collisions to the on-sale alcohol establishments in our community. And finally, this is the map of the city's high injury network. It's very common for these planning efforts to adopt a high injury network. And so through the collision analysis, we found when we tracked all of the collisions that in the areas that are red and orange, that makes up 88% of collisions happening on our roadways. And if you were to gather up all the mileage of those particular roadways, it's only 20% of our roadways. So if we were to move the needle in decreasing collisions and collision severity, it's really, we should be focusing on these areas in red and orange. So again, in red actually accounts for just 5% of the city's network, but that represents just in red, 45% of the severe and fatal injuries. The areas in orange accounts for basically the next 15%, making up that 20%, about 43% of severe and fatal injuries. So again, given that 88% of the severe and fatal injuries happen only on 20% of our roadway, concentrating traffic safety enforcement, engineering, and education in those areas, we think could make a significant impact in reducing severe and fatal injuries on our roadways. All of the information, and we'll share a link at the end, is available in detail, explaining all of these charts and figures in full detail, and I'll share that website link at the end. So after we did the safety analysis, we wanted to first start with just a general traffic survey that actually went out to the school age or parents of school age children K through 12, and then we also launched a survey citywide. The survey was launched earlier this year, and we really wanted to, again, ask general questions about traffic safety, and then also inform the community of what the top collision causes were in our community. And then we had a few open-ended questions. But I want to briefly just summarize the results. We had about 853 respondents. Felt that it was a good uh, the input that we received was, I think, a good cross section of the community. And then the dots represent from where the particular residents lived or worked or went to school. And so again, we got a good cross section of the facility or of the city. And now I'll just go over some of the highlights. So when we asked the survey participants, well, what are the top 3 stresses for walking in our community? First was vehicle speeding. Second was drivers not stopping. And then third was parked vehicles are obstructing the view of oncoming drivers and those crossing the street. The top stresses while riding a bicycle or e-bike was distracted drivers, sharing the road with vehicles, and lack of separated or protected bike lanes. And finally, the top 3 stresses while driving was behavior of other drivers, behavior of cyclists, and overall condition of streets. And then we also had some open-ended questions, and these were the open-ended questions. What are your suggestions for e-bike safety? What bicycle facilities work best for you? And what are your suggestions for improving traffic safety? And I'm not going to go over the responses in detail. We do have them in detail on our website. But I just want to say those that might be on this call tonight that did do the survey, just thank you. The good, the bad, the ugly was shared with that survey, and it was great. It was just, we thought the responses were helpful, and really for the context of why we're here tonight to talk about those priority streets to focus traffic safety improvements on. So let's get in to the proposed priority streets for traffic safety infrastructure improvements. So generally what you see here is the grid of what was making up our high priority corridor. Again, if we were to focus our efforts in these areas, that's what we think is going to move the needle in reducing the severe injuries. And so there's 3 colors that are shown here. So the areas in blue, orange, and gray, they do represent, again, the high injury network. The areas in orange represent corridors that we currently have implemented engineering solutions on or have currently in design or currently under construction. And so we've had a lot of outreach for those project specifics. When we talk about engineering solutions, it really can run the possibility of different solutions, from having more lighting at an intersection, having a curb extension to reduce the time that a pedestrian exposure in a street. It could be a bike facility on the network. It could be maybe a lane reduction on a street where it was prone to side swipes or broadside collisions, all of those type of things. The areas in gray, or either that we have had some, again, some other prior engineering treatments, or that there isn't necessarily a solution, engineering solution. Not all collisions have engineering solutions. So one of the obvious examples is driving under the influence. You can't engineer a roadway to address the DUIs. But for tonight, we want to show that the areas in blue, those are areas that that again come up for having some collision patterns, given some of the collision patterns could be addressed with certain engineering solutions. And so that's what we'll be going through for the next several minutes. And before I go through each of the corridors, I want you to think about these two questions as we're going through them. First is for the streets presented. Do you support the city moving forward to develop just a concept plan? It doesn't mean that we're doing anything yet, but what would potential engineering solutions look like, where, again, after we have adopted action plan, that we could in the future seek more money for further design and construction. The second question I want you to think about when we go over these corridors is, what are your personal challenges, whether you're driving, biking, or walking along these streets? And also kind of through the lens too, is it maybe when we show one of these streets that you don't personally have any issues, but do your kids have any trouble along these streets? Or do you have an elderly parent that might have particular trouble along these corridors? So that's the type of information that we're looking for. And we're also not looking for for you to name the engineering solution. It's much more, what helps us is, I feel uncomfortable at XY intersection because, is it because you can't see traffic? Do people, cyclists, drivers blow through this intersection? What's happening? And because knowing those stories really help us come up with solutions and designs. So let's run through some of these corridors. I don't have them listed in any particular order of importance. They're in alphabetical order. So let's start with Bass Street. And I'll go through, because all of these are going to have, these images will have the same look and feel and general statistic categories. And so let's go through it. So first we have Bass Street and then the location map. So this is a Bass Street, particular from Alomar to West Mission Street. So that's approximately in the Oak Park neighborhood, in the vicinity of Cottage Hospital. Then we have the corridor characteristics, what the length is, what the posted speed is, what's the observed speed, what the number of lanes are, what's the average traffic that we see along this particular street, average distance between crossings, and then we have an overview of the collision statistics. What are we seeing in terms of injuries along this corridor? And then the acronym KSI means it's guess a technical term or industry term that you'll see if you were to pull up action plans or Vision Zero plans in other communities. It does mean killed or severely injured. So when we talk about severely injured, it means that you're usually going to urgent care or the hospital based upon this collision. And then we have collisions by type. So in this particular case, it was two pedestrian related collisions, four bicycle related collisions, and then collisions, how many along this corridor are happening at the intersections. As I described earlier, there's definitely a trend that most collisions do happen at intersections. And then down below, there are icons. And so the star icon means that the particular collision is happening at nighttime. And then with the bike icon, in this particular corridor, it is shown here. And the other category typically means that it was a bike involved collision. The areas where it shows pink it's a side swipe related collision. The blue circle is a broadside collision, also known as a T-bone collision. And then the hexagon is a vehicle versus pedestrian. So again, what we want you to think about is, if you're familiar with this particular corridor, what are your experiences as you walk, bike, drive, or other ways that you roll? I don't think I had transit in there, but please, if you are a bus rider too, we want to hear about the experiences with that as well. And then the next corridor is Calle Real. I'm not going to go into all the specifics again on the corridor characteristics or collision statistics. With the follow-up survey, we do have each of these graphs, so you can take these illustrations in more detail then. But what we do know on Calle Real is that there is a capital project in design right now for a portion to have a widened sidewalk from essentially from the Oak Park area all the way up to Las Positas. So that is a safe routes to school to Adams Elementary. So many kids that live in the West Side neighborhood over here could use the pedestrian bridge with their families and then be able to take continuous sidewalk. So that again is coming soon. But also it's an unfunded need is to continue that all the way to Lacumba Road. So that will address at least some of the issues that are happening along Calle Real. But again, we'd like to hear more about your experiences. Canon Perdido, the area that we would like to dive into further is between State Street. So again, right really in the heart of downtown Santa Barbara. But if you were to continue east, then it is the backside or back entrance to Santa Barbara High. So between really Canon Perdido to be a prime connection street to downtown and to schools, and of course then further on into the east side. So it is a very popular street for travel, really by all modes. Want to hear your thoughts about this one. And injury collisions is very high along this corridor. On Chapala Street, that is similar to the same area that Bass Street, just a few more streets over, again from Alomar to Mission. And again, just having some higher injuries and collision trends happening along here that we want to take a look at. The next corridor is De La Vina Street. So there has been capital projects, Vision Zero projects done recently north of Mission, and that we're currently installing some curb extensions at several key intersections all the way up to Alomar. And then a few years back, we put in a bike lane there. And then we also, kind of south of this corridor in the downtown area, just south of Carrillo Street, did very similar improvements with curb extensions, lane reduction for bike lane, mainly because there was a lot of, again, side swipes with vehicles and broadsides, and high portions of vehicle versus bike and vehicle versus pedestrian. So those projects have been very successful in reducing overall collisions. But now there's sort of this gap that we want to analyze a little bit further. We have been analyzing some of the traffic flows, etc. But again, before we put pen to paper, I want to hear about your experiences. Las Positas. This is a big one between essentially State Street and Highway 101. And actually, I'd argue it would go a little bit further to about Modoc. And really, this is one of our principal arterials or higher speed roadways. And a few years back, we did some roadway restriping to help lower the speeds traveling west from State Street towards the freeway. And that has helped tremendously. And then just recently, just probably about a month ago, we have our first pedestrian hybrid beacon at Las Positas and Stanley. Because there's really limited crossings from the San Marcan area to then the north side of the street to then, of course, get to the Loretto Shopping Center and other popular destinations. But again, this is an area that we have had in our capital improvement program to have a study effort, but had been unfunded to date. And so we really think this continues to need attention. I want to get your feedback on this. Olive Street, the area is between East Carrillo and Mitchell Terrena. So that, again, right at Olive and East Carrillo, that's another sort of side entrance into the high school area. But we want to hear a little bit more. Again, it's very traveled by a lot of students and families in the area, and want some additional input on making this a lower stress route. Nepal Street, this is the area that we want to examine further, is between Coda Street and Quinientos. And where Coda and Nepal is, that's where just on the other side off the map is Santa Barbara Junior High. So Nepal is, again, a very popular route to school, and then a route also to after school destinations as well. So I really want to hear about this corridor as well. And then finally, the last, it's actually broken up into 3 slides, but it is the Upper State Street area, we do acknowledge that there's still a master planning effort going on for the lower part of the downtown for State Street. And that effort continues to be underway. But a lot of times, even in that master planning effort, we started to hear feedback from residents. Well, what about Upper State Street? And I think Upper State Street, we're also seeing pretty big projects in our process for redevelopment of La Cumbre Plaza and then some other areas along State Street. And we anticipate this corridor to really be a target for redevelopment over the next 10 to 15, 20 years. And so part of it will be, I'm sure, with public and private partnerships for having various safety improvements. But we didn't want to wait 10 to 15 years to be thinking about this. And there had also been the Upper State Street guidelines that recommended improvements for pedestrians, but it was essentially following the pedestrian master plan guidelines, which is also part of our municipal code. So as properties redevelop, there are certain specifics for what the sidewalk corridor should look like. But what was really silent, and then again, not a big focus in the last bicycle master plan, was at the time it was just on street bike lanes, but not like anything really more than that. And so we thought that was time to again look at this corridor. So the next few images, this starts Upper State Street as we are basically coming into the city at the Highway 101, and then it goes all the way to Hitchcock in this particular graphic. Again, and this is another principal arterial road in our city, so much higher traffic volumes, but and then of course a lot of injuries on here. And then this slide shows then picking up from Hitchcock Way to Constance Avenue. The traffic volumes declined slightly, but again, we have a lot of total injuries and severe injuries. And then finally, essentially going all the way to about Mission Street. So we're categorizing that as all of sort of the Upper State Street area that we would like your feedback. And of course, if you go south of Mission, a few more blocks, that's when it starts the State Street master planning effort that has been underway. So now we get back to the questions, and I wanted to have Chelsea come on to ask the first one, and this will be a live webinar poll. The second one, again, about sharing your personal challenges. We do have a smaller group tonight, so we might be able to get into it a little bit at the end of the webinar, but we do have a follow-up survey posted on our website where you can have more time, because we didn't want to have, in an hour we need all of your feedback and that's it. That's not the case. We'll give you more time for that. And then also, if you don't want to complete the survey, you could also see us next Wednesday in person on October 15th at the Main Library Faulkner Gallery. So with that, the first question is just basic. Do you want us to look at these roadways that we just went over to looking at potential engineering solutions?
Okay, so you should be seeing the question in front of you, and just go ahead and take the poll. Thank you.
And for the record, we cannot vote while you are taking that. It's strictly for the attendees.
Yes. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and end that poll. Thank you. Would you like me to share the results?
Sure.
Okay.
All right. Well, good. Thank you for asking that. And again, when we start to look at engineering solutions, it doesn't mean that you're already approving something because you don't know what we're suggesting yet. We need to hear more from you first. But that, yes, that's the process in our design process, is to hear feedback first, and then we start to um, kind of put pen to paper. And a lot of times for like concept plans of what we're looking at, they're not full engineer drawings. A lot of it, kind of like what you see for the icons that we're sharing for collisions in the story, it will look like that we might have symbology like, oh, a street light here, or curb extension here, crosswalk here, those types of things. So, well, great. So now we will have another poll coming up, and the next question is to help us prioritize traffic safety messaging. Like I said, that most of the collisions are by Santa Barbara County residents. And so we do think if we have very targeted educational messaging, that might help lessen the collisions. It's unfortunately, like, there's not just one secret sauce for ending collisions. It's really multi-pronged between education, enforcement, and engineering. But what we want to hear is, what would be your three top topics, and we'll go over what those topics are. The ones that we're suggesting, there's 11 of them, and I'll go ahead and read them out loud once Chelsea launches the poll. But the topic areas are sort of what we're seeing in trends happening from going over the collision data, and then also what we are hearing from the traffic survey. So what we thought were important, they're all important, but if we were to immediately launch something in the new year, what would be your three top ones? There's not right or wrong answer. So I'll go ahead and read it. All road users etiquette. Don't be distracted, and that would also be targeted at all road users. Driving DUI, so driving under the influence messaging for drivers, e-bikers, and cyclists. E-bike etiquette. Speed kills. Because again, we had one of the primary collision factors is unsafe speed. Stopping distance at various speeds. So again, a lot of the umbrella under speeding. And what you could see at various speeds, because the faster you go, that your cone of vision gets narrower and narrower. And we think that might be a good thing also to communicate. The other topics are no parking in red zones, bike lanes, crosswalks, and sidewalks. Intersection safety tips for all road users, vehicle and cyclist turning, and time of day collisions. So if you could choose your top three of those, what would they be? And know that we will still be messaging all the topics, but again, if we had to message a few, what would those be right away? And I'll give you a minute or so to answer that. And just so you know too, when you're answering these are all anonymous.
So Jessica, it looks like most people have answered. I can go ahead
Okay.
and end the poll and share the results.
All right. So I'm seeing at number 9, speed kills and intersection safety tips for all road users. And number 8, don't be distracted. Great, very helpful. And like I said, it's not that we're not going to talk about the other topics, that we find them all important, but that's just helpful for us. We are working with a consultant to assist us with some of the messaging, so it also helps them have a priority on the order that they're working on the messaging. So thank you. And the next question that we want to ask is, was there a topic that you saw missing on there? And if so, what is that? So that is open-ended. Again, there's no right or wrong. It's just, what is there a pet peeve um, that you might have that you experience all the time, that you wish, oh, I wish we had a message of that um, going out in our community. And again, these are all anonymous for the responses. And you're also, if you can't think of anything, that's okay too. And I'm not sure, Chelsea, like, on showing that one, if it can be shown or if it lists kind of in general, it might give us a bulleted list.
Yeah, I'm not sure yet, Jessica, either. About half have responded, so I'm gonna give it a little
Mhm. Okay,
time and then we can
perfect.
see what we can share.
And I'm sure some of these pet peeves might be a long rant, but what would be sort of the headline of your pet peeve? That would be helpful. And then in the interest of time, Chelsea, we could always, we'll share our email address at the end. So if there was more, if you felt like you didn't have enough time or got cut off, you could always email us as well.
Okay, I will go ahead and end this poll. And see if we can share some of the results. I'm not sure. Looks like maybe.
Oops. Details.
There you go.
There. So use your, yes, using signals. Where you have infrastructure that just ends, and what to do when that happens, I think. Dooring, that, yes. Good point. We did, I think we had that in our master list, and I realized that we did not have that on the list tonight. But yes, we are mindful of that one. Vehicle safety at intersections. Remind drivers of vulnerability of pedestrians and cyclists and children. Kind of relation between large trucks and maybe some of the collision severity. Yeah, the signals. Drivers passing cyclists unsafely. So at least, yes, the 3-foot rule. And then the larger vehicles. Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
And then Jessica, just while we're wrapping up the
Mm-hmm.
polls, there were a few Q&As that related to the polls. So I thought we
Okay.
could just go over those real quickly.
Sure.
One was a comment. I said yes to the question. I think it was about, should we further study the street?
Mhm.
First question, the engineering solutions. I said yes to the question, but I think some focus streets are much more important than others. And
Okay.
some of the most dangerous streets aren't on the list. So that was one comment.
Okay.
Another question, could we please have an idea of how many people voted? Yeah, in the last question, 72% participated. And they think in the first two, it was about 89%. So most people answered those questions. And then one other comment, I think it was related to choosing your top 3 safety campaign messages. It was, how about culture shift campaign regarding high hood vehicles kill? So I just wanted to bring attention to those while we were in the polling session.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
That's great. I'm glad that you did. All right, and we just have a few more slides left, and one of it where we're not going to go into detail tonight, but traffic safety enforcement. Again, I want to thank those that provided feedback during our citywide survey. Again, a lot of comments related to traffic safety enforcement that has been shared with the police department. The police department also wanted to make sure that you have avenues to, if you have any concerns, traffic safety related, that's not an emergency. Of course, if something's an emergency or there's a collision, somebody's hurt, you're calling 911. But this is more related to just general, if you have general traffic safety and enforcement related questions, concerns, comments, this is the number to call, 805-897-2300. If you do not want to call, if you rather just send an email, not sure how many of you have used the SB Connect app. It's a great app for the city of Santa Barbara. So like, say you recognize something that needs a repair, you can report it and cite the location. But same thing with the concept with related to traffic safety related questions. You can do the Connect app, and then it's the request button to provide some feedback. And so we feel like you don't have to wait necessarily for citywide surveys to come out. They're not coming out all the time, and so these are just avenues as issues arise or concerns that these are outlets to provide feedback to the police department. So what's next in our planning process? Basically the same content will be that we went over tonight will be in an in-person format. What we're going to be sharing again was each of those roadways and just blown up images. And again, you can still follow up with comments later via the survey or via email, or you could just provide them live, both just sharing your stories with us and also writing probably like sticky notes or messages adjacent to those roadways to kind of share your major concerns. And also we'll be bringing this information to the Traffic Circulation Committee at the city. They're the ones, all things traffic safety related, circulation related, that we go before as a committee, and then they make recommendations for city council. We are, because this is a three-prong with education enforcement and engineering too, just to bring awareness to the Police and Fire Commission, and then our Neighborhood Advisory Council. What tends to be very hot topics at the Neighborhood Advisory Council is just how people move to and from the neighborhood safely, and so we will continue on meeting with them as well on this. And so after all of those meetings that will wrap up in December, we'll begin to look at some concepts over the next few months. And then eventually we'll be also working on all those parallel chapters that are needed for the action plan. And the draft action plan is scheduled to go before the Transportation Circulation Committee in April, and to City Council in June of 2026. We have till technically September of 2026 to get an adopted action plan to, again, per the grant requirements. So for the survey link, we do have it on our website right now. It is currently live. We will also message you as well to send you an email about, again, where the website is. So santabarbarca.gov/safe streets. And if there was anything else that we didn't cover tonight, or if you had any other questions or feedback, safestreets@santabarbarca.ca.gov. And with that, I do think one of the other questions that we asked, or I haven't asked, is I think somebody, I think Chelsea, you mentioned that well, what happens if there's a roadway that wasn't covered tonight? So I think in the Q&A section too, if you could maybe type in that roadway too. So I think with that, we'll just leave it for general questions. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. And with that, yeah, just as necessary, Derek Bailey, our principal traffic engineer, myself, or Chelsea, will respond to the questions.
Thanks, Jessica. Yeah, I'll go ahead. We have a couple questions in the Q&A, and again, feel free to add additional questions in there. The first one is, why are there no routes crossing the freeway in blue? Was hoping to see La Cumbre highlighted as it connects to Modoc and has less conflicts for an overcrossing.
So at La Cumbre
over the, yeah.
area to like overcrossing over the freeway?
Right.
Is that okay?
Why is it not a blue highlight where we're studying that?
Mm. We do have in a there's regional planning documents for large projects kind of on the, I would say that within the next 30-year time frame. But one of the projects that's mentioned, it's not funded yet, but did include an overcrossing kind of near the municipal golf course area, and then across the freeway. That would then eventually you could hook into the Modoc and Las Positas multi-use paths. So as one crosstown connection. But right now that's where it sits. There hasn't been any immediate analysis, mainly because there had been other community needs ahead of that.
Okay, thanks, Jessica.
But we'll still document that as as a requested need.
And then a similar question, again, is there a plan for Lacumba Road? It's a very important, but it's an important but very dangerous connection for bikes.
And if that person could follow up a little bit more, is it Lacumba Road in its entirety? Is it kind of from the freeway all the way to Cathedral Oaks or Foothill Road?
South Lacumba Road by 5 points.
By 5 points. Okay. So we are with the redevelopment of Lacumba Mall, and there's a couple proposals for that. One of the proposals being the redevelopment of Macy's, and so that's in the process right now. So there are some right-of-way improvements with that development to get it consistent with our pedestrian master plan, and then some a little bit of intersection improvements in an area for a bus pullout right before that intersection. And then as you, let's see, go into Hope Avenue, there's some improvements, but I think those are some of the immediate, but yeah, we can look at that a little bit more. But yeah, so like State Street, Lacumba, by that upper State Street, that would tie into some of that concept. But I understand that, yeah, from a bike route, it goes beyond just that intersection.
Okay,
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. Next question. We live in a large area that is covered by several jurisdictions. How can we have the various administrations, cities and county work together in a coordinated fashion, combining statistics, safety plans, etc.?
Yeah, so the short answer is that we do have regional meetings through the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments. I do sit on the Transportation Technical Advisory Committee. So it's basically me and all of the peers of all the cities and then unincorporated county that make up that board, as well as a representative from MTD and the Air Quality Control District. So a lot of the planning efforts are tied to the regional transportation plan and sustainable community strategy. So there is high levels that there are connections and an information sharing across the community, because you're absolutely right. You can't design transportation in a bubble and just city of Santa Barbara specific. It does have to connect. One good example of of that was regional coordination when we were designing the Las Positas Modoc multi-use path. Then there was on the Modoc side, right at Calle de los Amigos was essentially the city's boundary. And then we're working closely with the county to then get that connection to the Auburn Trail, which the last piece is just starting construction. So anyway, that's a long-winded answer to that. But with anything, yeah, there needs to always be continued conversations. But that's typically where the monthly chats happen.
Thanks, Jessica. Next question, can we address areas more immediately through our maintenance budget instead of waiting for grant money? For example, if someone gets run over at an intersection, can we send some people out there the next day with paint and bollards to make sure the road marking is up to standards?
Yeah, Derek, do you want to chime in a little bit more on the maintenance side and maybe sharing some of the just do's that we can do?
Yeah, definitely. How do I answer this? So as we're progressing through the city with pavement maintenance projects, corners are being brought up to ADA standards, crosswalks are being converted to high visibility, just as a standard practice across the city. And as we're doing paving projects, we're also looking ahead of time through the Vision Zero lens, particularly, is there any safety enhancements that are needed, cost-effective safety enhancements that are needed? Like, can we cost-effectively add a street light if something is needed, if there's a need identified on a maintenance corridor? As far as if you're talking more like the quick build world, where some cities have programs to do quick build, they call them, where they will go out and create crosswalks or curb extensions with flexible delineators and that sort of thing. We haven't gone that route yet. We're more focusing on the permanent improvements. We've had really good success with the permanent improvements in the city, and we are having good success with obtaining grant funding. Some of the other considerations too is, does it match Santa Barbara's character? So we have something we refer to internally called Santa Barbara style infrastructure. And so we're trying to develop our improvements in the city in a way that has a really high aesthetic that matches is compatible with our community, is highly functional, and is very safe. And so as we're developing projects, we're really looking through things through that lens. And there's also a funding issue. We have very limited maintenance money in the city. Street maintenance has been cut significantly over the last few years. So a safety aspect that we have to be cognizant of is just being able to fix potholes so that people aren't hitting potholes. That we are able to repair sidewalks so that they're not tripping hazards, that sort of thing. So that's the reason why we really rely on grant funding as the city, is so that we can keep as much maintenance money focused on maintenance as possible, just because there isn't enough money internally to maintain the city.
Great, thank you, Derek. Next comment is, I like the current Milpas sidewalk project, but we need safe bike lanes on the whole street too. We really don't need 2 lanes each side. Alisos is nice, but it doesn't make Milpas safe, and Nopal seems like a lower priority in comparison. Is that something we want to comment on about why
Yes.
Milpas is?
Sure, I'll take a stab at it.
Sure.
From a traffic demand perspective, yes, 2 lanes in each direction are needed from about Coda Street down. any lane reduction below Coda Street would result in varying levels of congestion during different times of the day. When we went to the community with just having early discussions about the Milpa Street project, back about 2019, Jessica.
19, yeah.
Yeah, and that was really when the scoping meetings were going on, and when there really wasn't any kind of plan, and we were listening to the community with their ideas, and really just trying to start honing in on a scope. One of the questions we did ask the community was getting to that point. You know, does the community like the one lane in each direction cross section north of Coda Street? Or, you know, should we be moving that north or south? And the answer we got from the community was it's good where it is. And we also heard from our city council this past spring when they were discussing Milpas that, you know, it's just right now. I think we've kind of hit the sweet spot in terms of providing cycling facilities on the northern end, and with that road diet that was implemented a little over 10 years ago, and maintaining mobility for vehicular traffic on the southern end as it approaches the freeway.
And I think that, again, it's designed now, and again, it's very pedestrian focused. It was decided at that time too to have the parallel route on Alisos, which is great. We're seeing lots of kids using that route. Biggest users are probably to the junior high and high school. But it also, like, if future improvements down the road to Milpas, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to be off the table. That, yeah, design can be iterative, and we're really seeing Milpas will start to redevelop. A lot of the developments we're seeing are very car light, which means that the demand for walking, biking, and transit will be higher. Maybe at that time, when we have more residents with requesting more active transportation, maybe that would be the time.
Thanks, Jessica and Derek. Next, I have a statement and then a related question. Please make Mission, Carrillo, and Haley safe to bike on. And then a question on Mission and some other streets. Could a few no turn on reds help? As a cyclist and pedestrian, I feel drivers often aren't looking right because they're just waiting for a chance to turn before they're green.
Let's break that one up. So the first was Mission, Haley, and what was the third?
Carrillo.
And Carrillo. Derek, do we want to, I think some of the streets and what we vacillate on too for improvements on some of those, when they're the primary arterials, do you make the improvements on the primary arterials that are very vehicular dominated, really kind of the higher stress routes, or do you look for parallel routes to those streets? So I don't have the exact answer, but that's something that we always vacillate on. Again, we're always trying to look for the complete streets lens. But, and again, with transportation, it's sometimes we do, we're successful in getting money for large corridors, and other times we have to build the corridor over time with lots of different grants. And so, yes, that's something else that we look at is, or if we're only going to be able to piecemeal on a particular corridor, it doesn't make sense, because I think someone gave the example too of like just, oh, the sidewalk ends, now what? And so those are things that we continually grapple with and are mindful about. and I think it was also like from the pedestrian master plan and our bicycle master plan, just from a policy perspective, anything connecting to the freeway is generally like those are our highest stress routes, and how much you go out of your way to avoid those freeway intersections. And you know, like there's a certain part where you could take the longer route, but yes, even as cyclists or pedestrians, you generally in nature want to take the shortest route to get to your destination. So don't have like, I don't know, Derek, if you have something else to add to that. Other than that, we're very more mindful of those corridors as well.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it there. The freeway ramps, like specifically to Creo and Mission, they're not going away. They're always going to be there, and there's not a good way to really relieve those stress points just because there is so much traffic on both of those streets. And so going back to the bicycle master plan, that's really why the Mitchell Traina Street overcrossing was chosen as being such an important connection between downtown and the West Side neighborhood, just because it doesn't have the ramps. And it's just a much lower stress connection to get into the West Side. No, it's a similar concept to Milpa Street. Milpa Street is a heavily trafficked street, just like Mission and Creo Street. And so that was the direction we, as a city and with direction of our city council and feedback from the community, that's really the direction we took, is looking for these parallel low stress routes and trying to make them safe and attractive and efficient.
Thanks, Jessica and Derek. And then the other question was on Mission and some other streets. Could a few no turn on reds help? They had concerns as cyclists and pedestrians as far as drivers not looking. They're just, and they don't want to wait for the green.
Yeah, we driver compliance with turn restrictions on red is not good, to be frank with you. So we do really try to limit the use of them to where there's collision data to justify implementing them. And you know, when there is a data-driven reason for doing things, you know, then we can justify putting or asking our police to spend time and resources enforcing those. But to just start blanket implementing them, I think the compliance would be very low, and we wouldn't have a strong engineering reason to be doing those.
Thanks, Derek. Okay, just a couple more questions. One was a follow-up for La Cumbre Road. So to clarify, I think there should be a red, green left arrow signal into 5 points at the intersection of La Cumbre and the entrance to 5 points. Cars have repeatedly nearly missed me by turning left into the shopping center while I'm biking through.
Oh, good news. That is in the works. It's a few years away. It's a rather expensive traffic signal rebuild. The underground conduit, the wiring, one of the mast arm poles isn't sufficient to support left turn arrows right now, but we do have grant funding programmed in the next few years to totally redo that traffic signal, and turn arrows will be part of that project.
And that's what the Highway Safety Improvement Grant.
Yep,
yeah.
that's right.
All right, thank you, Derek. Next question, could the planning effort scope possibly also include removal of pedestrian and ADA access obstacles like signs or vegetation that are on sidewalks along the high injury network corridors? There are many spots where access is restricted or narrow. One example, no parking anytime sign poles in the middle of a sidewalk on De La Vina at the Bride replacement site. Thanks for this initiative.
Can you say that business one more time, Chelsea?
Bride replacement, maybe that, not quite sure what that is,
Okay. but
maybe they can.
It's
clarify.
probably somewhere on Upper De La Vina where the sidewalks are narrow.
Yeah,
Yeah. The rest of De La Vina has parkways, so most of the signs would be in the parkway.
But generally, yes, we for sidewalks.
bridge replacement, sorry.
What is
Bridge
it?
replacement.
I thought it was a typo. Bridge replacement on De La Vina.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and then that will have widened sidewalks. once
Yeah, at least in the
done.
vicinity of the bridge.
Yes, but yeah, there's still some
Yeah.
narrow spots.
Yeah, if there are any, please just reach out to us, and if there is a good place that we can move them, and or perhaps the sign's not needed, we'll try to address it that way.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next question, to what degree do you have to consider evidence such as throughput or parking when it is a trade-off with Vision Zero and Safe Streets goals? Isn't safety the ultimate priority, even if it means there are some trade-offs? So kind of getting back to that Milpas question, I think, earlier.
For like the on-street parking removal.
Yeah, looking at the trade-offs to convenience of traffic flow and or street parking
congestion
versus safety and meeting Vision Zero goals. To what degree do we have to consider those sometimes those conflicting interests?
That's a super question, and I don't think there's any community out there that's really not wrestled with this in terms of if they are planning some kind of reallocation of space. And it really comes down to project by project and who the most interested parties are, who the neighbors are, what the land uses are. We're starting to wrestle with one of these right now. And Jessica, she was going through the slide deck. She showed you a slide on De La Vina Street between Mission and Mitchell-Terena. And we're starting to wrestle with that one right now because we've had some requests to take that section down to one lane. So if you can think of north of Mission, like from Mission Street up to Constance, we did do the lane reduction, bike lane installation a few years ago. The request we've had is to continue that down to Mitchell-Terena Street. We've done a bunch of data collection here, and I think getting to your question, here's what, and we haven't finished all our analysis yet, so this is why there haven't been any community meetings or anything on this. But here's what it's looking like so far is that during certain times of the day, going down to one lane is going to create some congestion at the Mission intersection. Once you're through Mission Street, it's pretty smooth sailing once you get down till you get down to about Arriaga, where that next traffic signal is. So that's the trade-off is you gain safety and you gain some mobility for cyclists to get further down into the downtown area. But there are some short durations of congestion that will likely happen in Mission Street. What we did earlier this year is we actually went and closed down a lane through that intersection, and we video recorded it. We were out there measuring queue lengths and just to gauge how much congestion this is potentially going to cause if we were to do something like that. And the AM peak looked really good. There was, 10 to 15 minutes of congestion, usually around lunchtime in the early afternoon. And then, it seemed like there was another 15 minutes, half an hour, kind of in the 4:30, 5 o'clock range. And so when I say congestion, it just means people coming down De La Vina Street don't get through on the first light, like people are used to doing right now. So 23 plus hours a day works fine. For that 1 hour a day, it doesn't. And so that's a trade-off. And where the community would be on that, we really don't know, and what their tolerance for congestion would be, we really don't know. So that's something that's a conversation we would have to have with the community, but that's an example of a project by project analysis of the trade-offs, and just talking to the community on what the tolerance for trade-offs is.
And so maybe take that a step further, Derek, like when there is congestion and you miss that green light, there's some that you just wait your turn, but not
Yep.
everybody.
Some people get frustrated.
Yes, time is money, and we're on the hamster wheel of life, and then concerns are then you start to have sometimes red light running behaviors. Then so that's also in the back of our minds of the behavior related, where you can't have somebody out there 24/7 for those behaviors. So that's when Derek's explaining kind of that balance. Sometimes it seems intuitive, obvious. Oh, it's only for 1 hour, like just go ahead and do it. But we also, don't want it to, again, backfire where everybody just gets mad and then starts to blow the traffic signal. And we also see in the trends that auto right-of-way violations is one of our patterns. So
Yeah, and then another consideration is, will traffic divert off of De La Vina Street onto parallel southbound street like State Street, which is also one of our Vision Zero priority corridors, or Castillo Street, which is another street that's listed in here. So trade-offs, and just being really thoughtful about how we proceed with things like this.
Thanks, Jessica and Derek. One statement and one more question. Statement is, or the comment is, this person's spending a lot of time cycling in Boston lately, and they say no turn on red is the best, removes any ambiguity, and they're starting to use it in San Francisco. And even if some ignore it, many will obey. And then a question, any plans for Lower Chapala? It always felt pretty silly that it is 4 to 5 lanes and then down to 1 lane within a few blocks.
ooh, that's a loaded one. Two, there's a lot going on. I don't know, Derek, do you
Yeah, there is a lot going on. So there's State Street considerations. As far as what the future of State Street holds and what the demands on Chapala Street hold. There's a big old Paseo Nuevo redevelopment project that's going to have some pretty major loading access needs, and that's going to take up street space, curb space. The bottom part of Chapala, from the freeway up to about Ortega, potentially could probably go down to 1 lane northbound. North of that, traffic starts to get busier, but then the question is, what do you do with the space if you were to remove 1 lane for 2 blocks? It wouldn't necessarily create a connected bike network or anything like that. Yeah, exactly.
And then there's kind of related to the State Street master planning effort, and then emergency access and all of that. So
yeah, southbound especially is just a critical route from Fire Station 1 to get down into the lower part of downtown and to the waterfront. So it's an important street.
So I think from our perspective, for circulation, and it was part of the master planning, our bicycle master plan was to continue to have State Street as the spine network for cyclists. And mainly because there isn't any driveways in the downtown on State Street, whereas Chapala has a lot of driveway conflicts too. So even if we were to design a kind of a separated facility, you still have to navigate all of those driveways. So it would never come to comparison for what you could do on State Street.
All right, thank you. There's just 2 more comments. And one is glad to see Upper State, De La Vina Extension, Canon Perdido, Las Positas, and Calle Real on the list. Can we do Canon Perdido the entire length to the freeway? It's on the official city bike map, but no improvements. And please include La Cumbra crossing the freeway. And then another comment, I think you're underestimating the community appetite for safety solutions at the cost of some more rush hour congestion. We shouldn't design our city to the lowest common denominator, safety first. And then lastly, please do the De La Vina project. I drive it all the time. The second lane doesn't make it faster, just encourages bad behavior. I drive it constantly, but never bike it because that's suicidal after mission. The Olive Street and Alta Vista roundabouts aren't working as intended, need some attention to keep downhill traffic flying through without yielding. So all good comments and
All great points. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not seeing any additional questions at this time. So if anyone has.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I wanted to mention for Canon Perdido, because it was mentioned as part of the bicycle master plan, what ended up sort of happening was that the crosstown connections shifted a little bit to putting facilities on Ortega. And then there was Haley, and then coming into downtown on Coda Street, and so it was more a focus in that area. So noted, I think, depends. Is there more appetite for the continued crosstown connections? And then, of course, there was a big focus on Sola Street as well, where we did have traffic diversion to have low vehicle volumes. So that's kind of where we're at. That was the pause point. Again, nothing's just because something's not done, it doesn't mean that it's always off the table. So maybe if you could provide a little bit more detail when you follow up on that, it would be appreciated in the survey.
Okay.
Right. Well, thank you for those that have stayed on till the very end. And we really appreciate your time. It's always great to hear from everybody. Again, we'd love to see you in person too next Wednesday. And again, we will have kind of some very similar hearings related to these at our various city boards too. So thank you for contributing to make our streets safe, and have a wonderful evening. Take care. And just when you're ready, just go ahead and end the webinar.
Stop the recording. Okay.